First of all, thank you all for being here for putting up with these 2 talks. It's been very eye-opening. I got some less critiques from some of my peers. One thing I'm going to hard on this session is to slow down and speak very fast, so I'm going to try to speak a little slower. Secondly, I need to define what universal means. Some of you didn't know what I meant by universal volley or universal shot. That comes from teaching players that have big dreams. When you teach a player that wants to comes to you and says, Coach, I'd really like to win Wimbledon one day. You know, anybody that comes to me as a player, I always ask them, well, what is your goal? What's that be? You want to play high school tennis? You want to win the 3-5 ladies team? Whatever you want to do. But that universal term came from a player that came to me and said, I'd really like to win Wimbledon one day. And I was very skeptical, and I always told the parents the truth. I said, well, let's do some sessions. And I told the parents, I really don't think this is a good idea to do 2 hours a day of privates and get this schedule going where you're going to spend a lot of money for this player to become a world-class player because of such and such and such. Whatever limitations I saw, I was honest with them and told them, it doesn't mean I want to stop anybody's dream. In fact, I like to think of myself as a dream maker. I'm help people to believe in themselves and walk away with some on the face of what I'm all about. But this came about because I have a player that some of you know that watch college tennis, I talked about it earlier, Todd Kwiatkowski, who always had that dream of being a tour player, winning the US Open one day. And we used to get, any player that you ever coached that's at a high level that has achieved anything, they tend to be very strong-willed, they tend to be perfectionists, they tend to want to have things their way. And a lot of times in practice, he'll do just enough to win the point, and I'll come back and say, in a nice way, that wasn't good enough. And I said, what are you talking about? I'm beating this guy, I'm only 14, he's 16, he's ranked in the... So I'd say, do you really think, let's get back to real goal, you want to win the US Open one day, do you really think that volley is going to win against Nadal, against Djokovic? And you say, no, well, I'm not at that age yet. When I get to be that age, my ball will be better and I'll beat those guys. Okay, so that started the whole concept of what universal, we're talking about volley earlier, so universal volley winner. This volley here, yes, that'll be a winner if the person's over where a pad is at pretty much any level. But if he's recovering and moving, that volley right there, Michael Chang, Nadal, they're all going to get it, right? This volley here is a universal volley, or even shorter, nobody's going to get that because they're back in that corner, you're doing the geometry of the court, the farthest point, with a good speed to it, So the universal volley, meaning it'll win against any player, anytime, any surface, doesn't matter the condition. There are no excuse. You don't have to buy and say, yeah, but that would have won if you were at the French Open because it's slower. Or, yes, that would have won because I'm playing the left or whatever. It should be universal. That's where that term came from. Any questions on that? All right, because I might use it again during this presentation. Okay, so we're here because we're going to teach the top spin and serve and make it easy at first, and we'll get into stories about the pro players. I'd like to start off defining a top spin serve. Well, obviously it must have top spin, forward spin, and not back spin or slide. So we'll define, I guess everybody here probably has a feeling for what top spin is.
I've done that before.
Top spin is just basically low to high, right? Rushing the ball. This is top spin. And that's top spin. Bob, this is top spin. So top spin is not defined by how high or low it goes. A lot of times I'll have a person on the court and I'll say, okay, we need more spin on the ball. And they'll say, does that mean hit high? Do you mean hit higher, pitch it higher? Yeah, most of the time, but not always. So I know the term on the tours change a little bit. They don't always say he has more top spin on it. They'll talk about more forward spin. Well, that's just a transition from top spin being defined as a ball that has a lot of arc on it to a winner now. When you watch Djokovic hit his winners, he still has top spin on the ball, but he's just driving more through it. Or the ladies' game, a lot of players, people think Sharapova hits the ball extremely flat. She's got a little bit of forward spin on it, or top spin. So the definition of a really solid second serve is a ball that has arc and spin. So if I'm sitting here and I'm watching a match 10 courts down, how do I know that the player hit a second serve versus the first serve? If it's a high level, they're hitting the ball hard. Spin and arc. You can hear it, you can see it going through the air. So let's get that clear. The definition of a second serve from a beginner level all the way to a world-class player is spin and arc. Yeah, but coach, what about Sampras? I see him getting all ready with his big serve, second serve against Agassi, US Open finals. US Open, boom, he hits a fast slice right down the middle for a winner. Well, coach, that didn't have much arc. No, that's Pete Sampras, second serve. So at a higher level, yes, we will go for our second serves. And I'll talk a little bit more about when to go for a second serve, when not to go for a second serve if we have time. All right, so let's get back to the beginning, teaching somebody spin and arc on a serve. I had tremendous success with this, and the reason that I'm asked a lot to talk about this is because I had a lot of success with Andy Roddick. When he was 13, 14, the parents sent him to me, and we were working on, mostly we worked on him with his volleys, his left hand on his forehand, and kick serve. And he couldn't get it. He was spinning real fast, and he had this service motion where he'd bring his foot, he'd be back this, and bring his foot up. This is kind of what his serve looked like back then. It had a lot of slicing for a second serve. He had a little bit of topspin slice, but it wasn't really what he was looking for. He couldn't keep it. At that time, I think it was number Pronation, and there was a kid named Martin, his first name, was 1 or 2 that had a big forehand, would always run around and just cream any second serve. And so what we worked on is, I just can't get through this kid's head, how to get topspin. And I remember with Greg Rosetsky back, he couldn't get it for a while. We just did something like this with Greg. First of all, I just did this with Greg because he didn't understand it. And Danny wrote, in front of their face, the C topspin. We know topspin down here is low to high. How do you know topspin up? How do you understand or see topspin up here above your head? It's all blurred when you hit the ball. It's all blurred out here unless you're really just holding like this and really looking at it, you can kind of see it. So I brought the ball down in front of his eyes and said, I want you to take the same grip you always use, same side of the face you always use, and make the ball go with topspin. So this is the idea. This is what I do with a high-level player, just to let them see, okay, that's what it looks like. The racket's actually going from below the ball, up on the ball, below the ball, up on the ball. All right, good. It's spinning, that's topspin. Understand. Then I had 2.5 ladies in the clinics who wanted to learn it, and they couldn't do this. They swing and miss, and they just couldn't get it. So I put the ball on their hand, on the lower part where the watch is, on the wrist like that, and just said, okay, now make the ball, roll up your fingers, roll up your hands. And again, I like doing it on the court facing this way as opposed to somewhere else. To just get spin, I will do it somewhere else, but for them to understand, to make the ball go toward Pat, or in that direction, to do it like this and just to go up, make it climb, and see if you can make it spin. I have yet to meet a person that couldn't get them to do this and learn some spin. Or if I'm having trouble doing that, if they don't have a left hand or whatever, they're injured, then we can do this on the back fence and just have them climb the net. Sorry, the fence in the back. Okay, so this is stage 1. I call this stage 1, or this is stage 1. Either one, so that you can see. Bring in the senses in the person, you see the topspin. So after they did a couple of these, the ball's going, and you can make sure that they understand that the racket is going from low to high. Right? The definition of topspin in tennis is low to high. Could I hit topspin that go low to high? Outside of tennis, sure, this is topspin. Right? That's forward spin. Right? That's spinning. It's never go over the net, though, on the top of the ball. So we don't teach that in tennis. Definition of topspin in tennis is low to high. So you make that clear in the lesson with your kids or ladies, whoever, that this is low. Even though I'm above my head, I'm still, in relation to the ball, I'm going from low to high. So there, bingo. Okay, so now the concept is in Andy's mind, there's topspin. I gotta go low to high. I'm not gonna go side. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 is behind your hair stick. Behind your hair stick, you can feel it. Remember I talked about biting an apple? Well, we'll talk about that later and how I want the ball to bounce. But right now, I'm just worried about low to high. So I let them brush their hair. But hopefully they have a lot of hair like I do. They brush low to high. And get this feeling of brush. Have you yet to meet anybody that does this and hurts themselves? God, that hurts. Right? Because this is not topspin. You hit it hard, hit the frame, so that one hurts. They brush their hair. That's what I want you to do with the ball. Soft, just brush your hair. Toss the ball right on top of your head, right towards your head. Just go low to high. Yeah. Again, just going low to high. Again, this is what always happens in stage 3. This will happen when you first do this. You'll have somebody understand this, and they'll do it perfectly. They'll be a champion of this. And you'll go to this stage and watch them do this. Good, right, Coach? In fact, in Charlotte, I gave this demonstration in Charlotte, and we brought out some all-level ladies, 3-0, 3-5, 2-5 maybe, and that's what happened. That lady, and the rest of the people got it. A guy and the other 2 ladies got the idea. I just went over to her and said, no, I want you to stop, and the tip of your racket is pointing to the sky. So again, she go. Where's your racket pointing? Oh, down. Where's the sky? Okay, do it again. And so now this is stage 1. This is stage 2, and I have not always had success. There's evidence there where she kept doing that. But I would take that person and say, okay, forget about the fence, because she kept thinking, I want to get it up in the net. And turn her around as we do. We're back to the back fence, and we have her just back here doing this and getting her to learn how to go low to high. All right, so going here a little bit high. Again, this is stage 2. I'm sorry, my bad. Sorry, getting distracted. Stage 2 is brushing your hair up, toss the ball on top of your head, just go low to high. Make them stop up, make them see that we're going low to high. It's not chopping forward. All right, stage 3 is now giving your racket in the running position, letting it go all the way down your back, and then straight up. So you reach down your back, well, that's awesome. Down your back, and then straight up. Again, look where I'm stopping. This is extremely, extremely hard on the shoulder if you do this fast and hard because you're stopping. The reason for a follow-through is it's anatomically safe for your body. We want to follow through eventually. But for these stages, we only do it 2 or 3 each. And then one more time down your back and straight up, low to high. So now stage 4, because everybody's always in a hurry to do it, the full motion and slow motion. Very slow. And we exaggerate we exaggerate the follow-through, finishing up high. So again, you see, okay, we're going low to high. Where's the low start? The low starts down my back. The high finish is pointing to the sky. So stage 4, down your back, and finish up to the sky, and then encouraging the follow through. This is the first stage where we're going slow to high up, and then following through down to the sky. If they're doing this right, what should they have? That's the 2 elements they should have. Spin arc, right? Higher than that, and spin. That's our back card on our definition of a good second serve. Never once did I say slow. We're not teaching people slow. This racket and speed division, we'll talk about later, should be the same as the first serve. So we're not ever saying, well, we want it slow and high. It's spin and arc at the same speed as your first serve. Then the 5th stage is the full motion. Whatever you do, if you do the pinpointer, you do platform, you go ahead and do your full motion, full through all the way up and jumping through the court, hitting top. So again, stage 1, I'll do them all. So this is what ends up happening. You go through the stage, explaining, you tell the person to put 5 balls in their pocket. Okay, just go here, stage 1, or stage 1, whichever you prefer. And always with the correct grip. Okay, then stage 2, brushing your hair. Okay, and they won't be able to get over that. Don't worry, I mean, this is stage 2 too. That's also good stage 2, if it bounces over that. In fact, at a high level, you actually want to do this for stage 2. Let it bounce, make that sound, make it bounce over. That'd be ideal. It's hard, but that's the ideal. So, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 is all the way on the back, and up. You kind of fall through if you have any kind of tension in the shoulder. Stage 4 is the full motion. Oh, sorry, that was stage 4. This stage 5 would be just a little bit much faster. Any questions on those stages? They pretty clear? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Can they mess around with their grip, or does it have to be the Continental, or is it something that you can finagle with them as far as they're trying that motion, so people want to grip their racket?
Yeah. This is interesting. I was discussing this with a player and his coach last week. How critical is it to have a Continental grip? I think it's very critical, but which Continental grip? You go all over the world, everybody has a little bit different variation, and everybody's hands are different. Like I was talking about earlier, Steffi Graf's Continental grip is actually what we would classify as an Eastern forehand. And she had great volleys, great slice backhand, good serve. Then you got the people that serve the Eastern backhand grip, and you see their hands in this position, serving. And then you have Rimich, who's has this position. The main reason that we want to make sure that they use a Continental grip or some variation of it is because in contact, as you're coming up, there is full pronation, or you're going to hurt your shoulder. So we want there to be practice all the way through and out, and then the finish on down here. And if anybody argues with that with you at all, just have them go to YouTube and slow motion when I talk here. Slow motion, Sampras, Federer, all the top servers, and they will clearly see no matter what serve. This is a big point of contention at last year's Charlotte talk was somebody said, how do you hit a slice serve at Pronation? Well, even if you don't take my word for it, just go on YouTube in slow motion. You'll see very clearly Federer's got a great slice serve out wide. It's ready to do squirt. Does this slice serve? Here's what you'll see in slow motion from Federer. It's his power bend. His hand goes up. Here's his slice serve. Racket's going like down the side of the ball. As he hits it, he's pronating out and down. So the pronation happens as he's striking the ball and goes out. The same way the kick serve. As he's going up the back, is pronating up and out and then down. If you don't do that, you're going to get hurt. Okay, so back to your question. If you have a Eastern forehand grip, Which graph, by the way, she can use that on the serve. She switched the company. Eastern front grip, you try to do that. It's really, really tough on the arm. You get a full pronation. Your wrist is in the way. You can't get all the way. You know, if you watch the top server serve, your racket goes straight 360 degrees. It's pointing to the ground before they hit, and they finish is pointing at the ground again. Try that with the Eastern point grip. That's really tough to get the full 360 without getting your wrist in a very vulnerable position. There's a lot of reasons for using the Continental grip, and I think it's a lot, you get a lot more action on the ball too with the Continental. Did I answer your question? Yeah. So the discussion takes place, how do these guys, I'm going to try to hear, how many of you were in Charlotte for the talk? If you were in Charlotte, I want to have a little bit of variety to the talk, so it's not a boring talk for you guys. There's some variation on the Pro Tour as far as when they make the ball jump right, when they make the ball jump left. And ideally, with the same process as you're teaching kids who want to be great players, you want to have the toss in the same place for your first serve and your second serve. And you say, well, how's that possible? Well, it's not a matter of course, you guys are sitting away, it's hard for me to show you this thing. If, let's see if I stand over this way, and I'm serving straight ahead down this way, and I'm serving to you guys, and I throw the toss here, you'll say, okay, that looks like a pretty flat toss. As toss over here, what's going to happen? Slice over here. Kick, right? And you can so ideally, you want every advantage you can get. So the first serve toss would be here, and those people right ahead of me, you can see that. But can they move there? Can they see this if I bring the toss back to here? No, they can't. You guys from this side can, but they can. My opponent cannot see if I toss here or here. It's only a matter of 3 or 4 inches. But now I'm tossing it closer to me. They can't see what's happening, and now I can get underneath the ball easier and come up on the ball. Also, if you teach a kid or teach anybody to toss them left to get your kick serve, you get immediate gratification. It's a lot easier if I do this to come off the ball and get kind of a kick serve going by bending my back. And it's very healthy for your back. In fact, Brenda Schultz, one of the people I taught her to keep her tosses in this direction. As she got more nervous, she would toss it this way. A good interesting story about San Francisco's coach. And was interviewed and said, what do you have to do? Somebody doesn't want to work this long. What do you use as a coach? You're more just a caretaker? He said, no, we're fine-tuning all the time. Early rounds of matches when he's nervous, he tends to throw the toss back this way a little bit, and bend his back more for safety. That's very normal. And we have to keep bringing it back, because when he does that, opponents know what's coming, it's bad for his back, and the ball doesn't have so much forward run. Yes, it'll jump this way pretty well, but it doesn't have as much forward run. That's an important word. You want to get to the court quickly. If it jumps more to the right, the person has more time to get in and nail it as opposed to getting to the court quickly. So, the tossing and kick serve, I'm big proponent of not bringing it back. Brenda Schultz insisted on doing that. She was out with lower back surgery because of that. And she did an exhibition with me in Charlotte maybe 6 years ago. We talked about that, jokingly, that how she didn't even realize she just started in matches and just kept doing it for safety and ended up bringing her back. So I'm a big proponent of not tossing the ball to the left to get more kick on it. Okay, so I did mention that I would talk about when a pro goes for a second serve. So we've got the kick serve, and you've got safety. You need that foundation. You need to know that you can serve. What's the other definition of second serve? Do we have to make it or not? Of course, otherwise you lose the point. So it has to be safe. You have to be able to say, okay, I've got my really safe second serve, which might look a little bit more like this, where you're going really big up on it, so it's really high and safe. And then you might have this as a second serve, where you're going through the court. So generally when you see, I learned this actually from scouting and coaching in Sean Macron, he had a tendency, he's the one that started even before Sanford, and Sanford ended up doing the same thing. So if they missed their first serve just a little bit long, that's a lot long, just a little bit long, that's better. Then they often went for the second serve. When did that? Because that was 6 inches, okay. And they often went for the second serve because it's a little adjustment. All they're going to do is snap the wrist a little bit harder. You say, wow, how do these guys how are they so brave? But also the next serve, and then the next serve, you just snap a little bit harder and it drops in the court. It's a very slight adjustment. When you're playing that much, that's easy. It's not that risky for those guys. So we learned that about Max. It's the same. If you watch the videos of him when he's playing US Open, you're like, God, he's hitting an ace on the second serve. What did he do on the first serve? He missed by a couple inches. second serve, your stepping is in. So the guys, that's good information for us that are coaching tour, because you know if you're playing Sanderson and misses his first serve, there's not time to move up and expect you to have a kick to attack. It's time to really watch his toss carefully. Is he coming up the middle of that fast slice, or is he coming at me? You just, it's a little bit more knowledge. You can't. And that's what made Sanderson one of the best of all times, is his toss was so consistent. He didn't vary it much at all. Up to this point, any questions? Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. If I'm serving it here, so here's my first serve toss, second serve, just bring it here. Because from here, they're all doing power, and they're all of them are getting their hip way out. If you watched last night, the guys were consistently serving, I don't know, 106 to 120 in that range. You gotta look effortless, especially Taylor with the effortless. It's from that power bit, from getting your hip out and then using his legs and hips and the kinetic chain all the way up. So for second serve, you just bring it a little bit closer, so now you really are underneath it, and you can shoot your hand up and off the side and get the kick.
Besides putting, countless hours in on this, is there any solution you have for players that get to that safety toss and then you got to get it back? Is there any thought process that you have them go through when they're doing that? Because it's easier when the ball goes over, like you said, it's safer because you can get it all, it hurts your back. I understand all that, but is there any process you can go through with them besides just doing it a million times, where they just get the total confidence in it to hit it from right here every time?
Yeah, what he's asking is a question that we use at a high level in tournament play a lot. He asked, how do you keep the player from tossing it to the left and safety? And if Sanders was doing it, you can believe that all players feel that. In fact, some players don't worry about it. They just go all the time and do a lot of core work and hope their back never breaks down. But what I like to do is the same thing I talked about earlier. When I want a player to learn how to move forward and serving volley, I'll have them pick a spot in the match when they're not nervous and serve and volley. If they win it, they serve like again and again and again as long as they're winning. Well, what I do early in the match, if the player is prone to doing that, is say, let's just go ahead at points that aren't that important. Toss your ball a little bit more to the right than you do when you're nervous. Not necessarily way to the right. I mean, if you really watch where a player with a great service, the toss lands, it's generally about maybe anywhere from a foot to right above their foot. You say, well, that's right above their foot. Look at Roddick. Your Roddick serve, when you watch him, if you look at from the side, the camera was from the side level, looking at it, Roddick, for me, he's one of the best servers of all time. He didn't have the tools that Sampras and Federer have, and he had a big forehand for a while, and he got tied into the screen all the cover all the time. But his serve was phenomenal. His technique, when he was playing good tennis, of getting his left hip over the baseline, the ball would lay right up where it is. His shoulders are actually perpendicular to the ground. We try to get that because what you want is that leverage of, I like to use the example of back in the medieval days where they had catapults, that's what we call catapults. And the catapult would be a focal point, which would be about the left side. The catapult would go boom, and throw the rocks over the castle wall or whatever. So you want that image. The kids love that image. I can tell them about that. They go from here. You want the whole right side to go up and over. You don't want this side coming down. So that hip being up high, the right shoulder being down low, and then the right foot engaged. With the right foot not engaged, you don't have a consistent fundamental kinetic chain going forward and up. Without this foot, you see a lot of players serving, they bring their foot up and they bring it over here. Now they can't do the full kinetic chain, so they're basically serving from just core and shoulder, and often just from shoulder like a baseball pitcher. The serve is not a baseball throw. It's more like like a baseball pitch. It's more like a center fielder throwing the home plate because they've got to get a little bit more height on the ball. Serve, we're hitting up on the ball. Baseball pitcher is throwing a straight line. You're not, unless maybe I'm throwing softball. But you're throwing like that. Tennis, we have to get up and over the net. We have to get what we joke about. We joke about is, well, I'm getting off the track. Let's get back to the point. The toss, to answer your question, the toss, we want to try to keep it a little bit to the aggressive side early in the match and then keep reminding yourself. If the guy's stepping in the team, I'll keep reminding yourself, I want to get my toss back here so it runs through the court more. The problem we have is that the kick serve over here is getting results, and the guys have a problem, and that's a big problem. Is, they're going to win the match because of it. I really try to get it back. Okay, so to answer your question before I get too much on that subject, a little bit, you just got to keep it like you said.
It's hard to answer. Actually, so I mean, that's about as well as you can.
But with Sampras, what Andy Cohen would do is just make him get back down and practice right after the match. And generally what we do is right after the match, while the tension's still running high before the player goes and showers and cools off, while his emotions are still curious, the match is finished, and hopefully he's won it. You bring it right out, and you spend 5 or 2 minutes. After every match, most of them if you win. If you lose, sometimes you go in, you're showering, you're off for the next, you get on the plane and you go in. If you win, I always send my players right out to the court right away, and whatever they need to fine tune it. Unless they played a perfect match and everything felt great, then okay, no need. But if they were choking on their forehand and they left a few backhand lines, whatever, you get out, hit a few, so it's fresh in their mind. In this case, what I would do, I would go, here's that's going to be good. I would go right out on the court, you only hit a few second serves with the toss where you wanted, aggressive second serves, as soon as you felt good, gone. Sometimes it would be 3 minutes. Never more than 20 because you want to get them out of it. See, while it's still fresh in their mind, because that habit learning and pressure, like I said earlier, sticks. So you want to practice it right off the bat, but it's still feeling a little bit of tension. All right, so back to what I was talking about there. I don't want to lose everybody. So what I do to learn how to use the right side of the body is I'll often have players. I'm a believer in the platform serve, and this is what I'm explaining why right now. Is that yes, bringing the foot up has been proven to give you maybe a few more miles an hour. But again, it's forward miles an hour. It's not as much up. When I had Roddick, he was bringing his foot up at a high speed, and I put him into a normal platform serve, shoulder width apart, and copied Sampras. At that time, Sampras was serving well, that's what we were copying. He decided on his own to bring it up really close. And what I was doing with him was, we would serve off the right foot only to teach him how to use his right leg better. Because when he was bringing it up, this was all about, he would start with his feet really wide apart, throw it, and just go, and kill it. I'm sorry. Bring it up and then kill it. It was kind of one of those jerky kind of serves. And I wanted him to calm down so he could get some upward motion for his kick serve. So I had him show with the part. He decided later on to bring it up. The point I'm trying to make is that the right foot is key to have a long-lasting, being able to serve day in and day out for 5, 6 matches in a row. Because that's once you play at a high level, you're not just playing weekend tournaments, you're playing Monday, Tuesday, and all the way through the week. Your shoulder's going to break down, your elbow's going to hurt. You want to use your big muscle groups as much as possible. Well, the right leg is key. So when I'm serving from this position, people don't seem to know that if you look at YouTube, look at the calf muscles of Federer or Sampras when they're pushing off, and they could actually lift this foot off the ground and just serve off the left foot. So okay, why don't I do that? And that's what we did a lot of that with Roddick. We just got to lift your left foot. Let's get rid of your left foot. Just have him serve like this at lunch, where he would serve like this, and just push up on his right leg and start getting some spin pushing up. Then when he got in this position, then I said, okay, now let's just concentrate your mind. Think, right foot, right foot, right foot. I'm going to push up the right foot. And he do the full motion. Push up his right foot again. So eventually, he was trained to load up. When I was with Ruzetsky, when his serve would go in the net a lot, he would tell himself, he's a left-hander, but I'll talk right here because that's my position. He would say, get my left hip up here. So he would not necessarily think this shoulder down. He would think this hip up and really load up because he wanted his hips to really exchange when he understood it. So the back leg is critical for when you see somebody like Roddick. You know, it's not very, as usual, I shouldn't say uncommon. For me, when I was training with Roddick, when he's once already at the age of 14, from the hit a kick serve, I'd be hitting backhand overhead to get it back. And they can't do just your arm and shoulder over and over. You can demonstrate it a few times. Your arm and shoulder get tired after a while. You want all that ground coming from the leg up. At the ends, your wrist is just nice and loose. Allow yourself to pronate at a high speed, and that's when you get that tremendous kick. Okay, any more questions before we go on to the next subject? We're good? Okay, so this next thing is something that I really enjoy working on because I like the details of what makes the ball bounce. A lot of people say, how do I make the ball jump to the right for topspin? How do I make it jump to the left for topspin? So the best way to understand it is you take a ball and you spin it on the ground and see if it's spinning just forward with normal topspin, and which way is that ball going to bounce? Forward. If I'm tilt that ball a little bit to the right over there, but my ball's moving forward, but it's spinning that way, which way is it going to bounce? To the right. So you just answered the question. All I got to do is make the ball spin like that. That's how you kick serve. Right? And now you've got to work with the hands. So if I wanted to jump like Stefan Edberg, he was tough to play to coach against. I don't play with the coaching against him. Because with the same toss, he can make the ball kick to the right or kick to the left, which made him such a great serving volleyer. he understood this principle very well. So you're waiting, you see some videos of Agassi where you're returning a tip, but you didn't think Agassi was a beginner. He'd get ready to lean in and hit that famous turn in his back and all of a sudden the ball would be in his face. And you'd see him do this, Agassi doing that. The guy's got the best eyes, the best return in the game. Other times he'd be like this, ready to key on his forehand, ball would come back in his face, or he'd run up like this to hit a forehand and jump away from him. Until you got to know, obviously those guys out there play it a lot, they get to see how the ball's coming to the air. So if you make a ball jump to the right, it's going forward, but it has a tilt to the right, that's going to make it jump, kick right. Now, the other way, so it's going to go like that, where you're hitting a top spin slice, which is actually going to grab and jump that way. It's all done with the angle you hit. So if I want the ball to jump to the right, you're actually making contact at about 7 o'clock on a tennis ball. If you think of that as a clock facing the back, 7 o'clock is where my thumb is right now, and you're hitting from 7 up and through over 2 o'clock, and then go. So that ball should be going through the air with that tilt to the right, hit and go. If it doesn't, it means you caught the ball more, and maybe 3 o'clock you end up making it turn more this way, so it's going to hit and jump that way. So you play, and a good way to do it, I like doing this away from the tennis court, just sitting down, like we have a clubhouse when we're in town, going around, we just have the kids sit down and take balls, and just play with the different spins, and not be too worried about being in the box or out of the box, just try to make the ball bounce different ways. So we literally have them just sitting in there and doing this, and just see how they can make the ball bounce. Can make the ball bounce to the right, get a little more slice on it, make it bounce to the left, and just trying different things with their wrist to get a feel for it. At the end of the day, when somebody else comes to you and says, hey coach, I have 1 minute, I want to make my serve better. You know nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. Not leveling. Coach, just 1 tip, please. I only got 1 minute. I go up and play match, help me. My serve. Well, then I take away everything else and say, I don't even know it. Wherever you have anything, just say, okay, it's all on your wrist. Wherever you point the wrist, the ball's going to go. So if you have a 2-0 or a beginner or whatever, you can never play with somebody that really can't understand anything I'm doing at all right now, and all they have is like a Eastern front grip or western, and then you say it's the wrist. Wherever your wrist points, the ball's going to go. If your wrist is pointing to the right, the ball will go to the back end. If your wrist points to the left, the ball's going to go right. I mean, it's common sense. Wrist pointing to the left, the ball goes to the left of the box. If your wrist to the right, the ball goes to the right of the box. Want the ball to go higher, hit up. Want the ball to go down, hit down. So at the end of the day, the wrist is the steering wheel of your car, of your serve. Not the toss. And that's so many people that I see come to me, and they're so toss dependent, and they come up and they go, get ready to serve. Boom, serve in the net. You go, God, I gotta toss it higher. Boom, God, I gotta toss it higher. Still gonna coach, what do I do? You know, obviously that's a joke, but that's the kind of thing you get, whereas with the wrist, it doesn't matter where you toss the ball, you're gonna be able to adjust. All right, any questions?
Do you have any tips on how to get, obviously to hit the kick and the slice, you need to have the Continental grip. Do you have any tips to help get that player that's hesitant to change? You know, they want to serve with that Eastern forehand grip. How do you get them there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a very highly rated girl in 12 right now. His parents are determined. I'm a believer that it's up to us when we have young kids to teach them every skill we can, as well as we can, so fundamentally they're sound. So when they get to be 13, 14, 15, they start really discovering their personalities and how they want to play. We've given them the tools to do it. So if you find a child just loves that, this girl just loves coming in that all the time. It's just her personality. She's very unusual. And I'd be doing her disservice if I didn't get the right grips in her hand at this age, because soon she's really having success, and she has the wrong grips, and she's switching grips to the net. She's limited. So I'm a big believer in that. A lot of people say, why would you teach Continental grip to 11, 12-year-old girl? But there's an article in Tennis Magazine about that. You should wait because of the shoulder. I strongly disagree. Listening to some of the biomechanics people talking about the proper way to throw a ball is when you watch football, quarterback, baseball, whatever they throw, the good thrower, I'm not talking about the side riders, but the people who throw overhand, when they finish their throw, it's pronated. So I try to, if they're having trouble, generally it's because they have never learned to pronate. And that's why you see lots of coaches with footballs on the court showing them how to, when the kids are throwing football around your court, you should let them throw like this. You should be sure that they're throwing it. Even if they throw a wobbler or whatever, make them do the pronation. Then it's a lot easier. And I just have to put the Continental grip up here above their head and just have them go, again, don't worry about the ball going out. Just practice this motion where they're just doing this and letting my hand go out like that. Even if the ball goes way, what most kids find when they first learn to pronate is the ball goes really far. They're like, wow. Do you ever have some kids that come out and they're trying their best to buy it? They can't go anywhere. You're like, come on, you're a strong kid, come on. You teach them this, and all of a sudden, wow, the whole world opens up. World of power, speed. The shoulder is built to go like that. I mean, I am not right now trying to do anything at all with this. You can see how little I'm not using my legs, I'm using my hands. It's just for proper pronation, I'm hitting the back fence, a little effort. So you take the kid that says, I'd rather use these to inform because I've got security. This is what it is. It's their security blanket. This is very safe. Very safe. Just poke it right. I can poke it to the right. I can poke it to the left. I get it in. I can go do this one. I put some backspin. Right? The ball's in that. Okay? All right. I mean, that's fine. If there are 3-0, 3-5 player and they have success and they're having fun, that's what it's all about. I'm not going to change them. If they come and say, Coach, I want to try the lesson here. I want to come on grip. No matter what age you are, I'll say, okay, show me how you throw a ball. If you're throwing like this, I'll be concerned. I'm going to say, okay, no, let's throw like this. And the ball will go everywhere first. You know, it'll go way off to the other. Just start getting this motion. And then again, put the grip in your hand. Forget, we might even aim down this way. Okay, heads up. So if I do this and just have them from you. You'll be amazed at the success you get if you're disciplined and you make the player do that. Say, wow, all of a sudden they've got a good pop, good power. They won't be able to control it at first because that's so new and foreign. Then gradually you just start teaching them from a smaller area how to get the spin on the ball, how to use the wrist to come down, to go a little bit more right, a little bit more left, but they're always pronating. Does that answer that question? I'm a stickler for that, especially after seeing all the injuries in the game. You know, there were some pretty high-level players. You watch Pam Shriver, I don't know if you guys remember Pam Shriver. She's a very good server, but if you watch the amount she pronates, she always had a bag of ice every other match. Like, wow, it's just, you know, such a good player. She's got everything she needs all around her. You watch so much videos of her serving, and you're going to see a player that does this on a serve. You don't see the full pronation. There's a stop there where the shorts get jarred and down. Yet she had a pretty good serve, pretty good pop on her serve. She won a lot of serve line tennis. So I think it's critical to teach the Continental grip as soon as possible, and then the pronation. Okay, so this is, I'm supposed to talk a little bit about if you have the player that won't change grips, a 3-0 lady, and the claims it doesn't want. So what do you do with her for second serve? Then you just work on hitting the side of the ball. You work on hitting the side of the ball and see if you can get her to get a little slice. And if she can get slides, like right now I have Eastern front grip, I'm hitting slides. If you get them to do slides, then you say, okay, now I'm hitting slice up. So now what they're really hitting is kind of a topspin slice. I still want to try and pronate, but if they won't do that, I can teach them the slice by hitting the side of the ball, and then I can slice upwards and get the topspin so they get more safety, get more height of the ball. And if they want to do the low slider, they have that up there, you know, the bag of tricks too. More questions?
Bill? I was going to make just a comment. I've had real good success trying to help what Steve questioned about trying to do the Continental. Bring them to the side fence, get them with their rackets up, make them go racket edge, racket flat, racket edge, racket flat. And start to get the feel of how you're going to have to turn to get the face into the ball.
That's actually a great drill. Everybody hear that drill? I like that drill a lot. He's showing here where you have a player that, like some of the players that have come to me, they come and they make contact almost always about like that. Or they open the racket a little bit, but as soon as they're hitting it, the racket closes again. Have them make contact like that and say, okay, that's not what we want. We want you to learn how to pronate open the hand in contact. So that we shoulder and open. That's actually pretty good pronation. I'm not doing anything. Look how much racket I speed. I'm not trying to make. So the more in fact, Matthew, you bring up a really good point. Okay, so Brzezinski was a power monitor. All he wanted was, you guys have the radar gun out there testing every day, 16, 17, 100 miles an hour. Get up there, pump the sleeves up. And Dave might remember these days where Jim Luke called the tennis trick crowd. There at Desert Springs and Palm Springs, and people outside had this little Wilson paper on his feet. And so Greg loved to get out there and be out there, how do you hold and say, Coach, I gotta get more, I gotta get more, get more. He'd run and he'd jump, he even tried this one, or he runs in and he jumps and does this. He just weren't getting anywhere. So finally I said, Greg, wait a minute. All the power is coming, 90% of your power is going to come from your wrist and pronation. And he disagreed strongly, so we actually just put him on his knees, had him get on his knees, so he had not took away his legs. He can still use his shoulders, so have him go from here, he just worked on pronating through it. He was hitting the ball consistently. I think his top speed was still 100, so maybe 95 miles an hour might have been his top speed at that age. But just his wrist, he was breaking little less than over 80 miles an hour. Just with his wrist now. You just saw the amount of power screaming back there. It's phenomenal how much, see, just running and stopping there, there's a tremendous amount of, and I didn't do my jump, I didn't do a power gun. So that idea of being able to get your pronation all the way through, snap it, is a huge part of speed. Now, protecting your arm, your shoulder, your wrist, and doing consistent data now for the rest of your career without injuries is a huge part of getting the power game going up and through. That protects your body. Tremendous amount of energy comes up from the ground. So if you're hitting the ball at 90 miles an hour like this, if you add the rest of it, you might be able to crack 100. I'm not saying you'll double your speed, but you'll be able to crack 100 for the rest of your life without hurting yourself if you're learning the correct power game. More questions?
Yeah, so Roddick had a sort of abbreviated backswing on his serve. Do you express any opinion to players on that, or a small personal preference?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, if there's a sports doctor in the good job, I'd love to get his opinion on this, but you have coaches and players and sports doctors that say that this is better for your shoulder. Drop your shoulder down, just let it drop nice and loose, and then go through your serve. And you have people that say, what that does is that sets your shoulder in a weaker, awkward position. And if this is safer for your shoulder, you do a little more like Roddick would do, just pull it up and then do it. That's cleaner. So I've heard it both ways, and what happened with Roddick, the way he tells it, I wasn't there what happened with another coach, was that he was pissed off in practice because his timing was off. He couldn't, and keep in mind, this is a bigger movement. It's harder to time, and this is easier. So he got pissed off in practice, took a ball, was pissed off, and his had his back and made it just went like this. He said, wow, wow. Up to right, the timing felt good. As soon as he started doing it, it's stuck ever since. So that's, I think it's, you know, you've had players over the years that have served like that. You know, you've had some players that Jay Berger started up here and was served from there. Not that Jay had a great serve, but it was consistent and it was well placed. You know, I tend to be traditional, and my two favorite servers are Federer and Sampras. And what I like to do is take the commonalities of all the great servers, and I say all the great servers do that except for Roddick. And what Roddick does really well when he gets in that position, if he really watches it, when he gets in the position, he goes, and he has his shoulder, he has his down, and he has his shoulder relaxed. Everything is relaxed. It's not, people don't imitate him often do this, and their shoulder goes up near the ear. This is not good. You start getting impingement when you have your shoulder near your ear. When you're watching, he gets in this position, and when he goes to serve the ball, his shoulder is perfectly relaxed. There's a lot of room between the ear and the shoulder. You don't see him serving like that, and that's critical. So whenever you have a player that wants to do that, I'm okay with it. I want to make sure that they're in a very relaxed place. There's a lot of space between the shoulder and the ear, a lot of freedom here.
I have a girl who I think somebody tried to get her to do it like Roddick, but her arms are all over the place doing that. What I want to do is I want to bring her back to the traditional style, just change the mechanic of the brain.
Yeah, it's supposed to be to simplify. It's not supposed to be all over. But when you do that, it's supposed to be to simplify things and help the people player get his timing or her timing and keep with him. But I think everybody's individual. I still to this day prefer to teach just letting the shoulder relax and drop and get it in a more traditional way. But I certainly not against the player sort of like Roddick. I can go wrong.
I think if they can do it without being choppy, I find the biggest issue I've got with the players that want to abbreviate the backswing is that they get into a choppy motion instead of relaxed. And that's the hardest thing to get them out of because one, especially when they're playing, they're tense. And if you're talking about 3-0, 3-5 that are trying to find what's going to work for them, especially the men, it ends up being real choppy instead of smooth. And I prefer the traditional too, just because I find that the timing and smoothness of it is, lends to it. But that's where I get into most of my issues are the choppiness of the swing.
Yeah, the smoothness is critical. Okay, any more questions?
Becker and Steffi Groff both finished here. They showed you that every time you saw a picture of them in the magazine, they were here. How come you've never seen anybody else do it since those two?
Well, they do it, it's just they continue to, right? Becker later in his career, Becker, what everybody was talking about, he had almost an Eastern player, right? and he still did that, and everybody's worried about his shoulder. Later in his career, if you look at his grip change, it's a little bit more over toward the real Continental, and you see him continuous movement all the way through. I believe they made that adjustment. I'm not sure. I don't know. I know Stephanie pretty well. I know that she would snap it out. And later you're going to see her doing the same thing. The German Tennis Federation back then was so good at high speed film early and showing how to get speed, like doing the Pronation. I lived over in Germany for a while. I was training. I trained Claudia Kill. She was in the foreign over back then. And we did a lot of work. Unfortunately, she had been all the way out to this motion, and we showed the film and tried to get her to do it more and more, but we couldn't quite do it.
Talk a little bit about the dynamics of the toss ball, the release of the ball, how many fingers you can have on the ball throughout the progression of the toss. It just doesn't move your elbow going, wrist going, to shoulder movement.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, early in my career, I didn't believe this toss was very important because I thought that I'd seen enough players choke under pressure, and all of a sudden the toss would be gone, the wind would be there, the sun would be in your eyes, and so you had to adjust with your wrist. The toss would be way over here because of the wind, or the sun might be in your favorite spots. You can toss over here and adjust with your wrist. But as I got more and more in the Pro Tour, I realized that rhythm is everything for these guys, and it all starts with the toss. So the toss is something that helps the players feel comfortable, and they're starting to serve with their toss. And we all do their rituals, whether it's 22 bounces like Djokovic, or it's just 1 or 2 bounces, and they come up. This part of the serve is very critical that you start out with confidence, and I like to call it a placement rather than a toss. I don't want my players visualizing tossing it up there or getting it up there. It should be lifting or placing. Now, for little kids, that's tough. You know, for them to get that ball right where they want it time and time again and just place it, they tend to want to throw it up there because it feels heavy to them or for whatever reason. So to answer your question, there's many different ways to throw a toss. There's even Daniel Marco from Spain, is a good player who adamantly believed that the more spin his toss had, the more action his ball had. Makes sense. If the ball comes at you with heavy topspin and you just hit it medium speed, it'll explode off your racket. So he would actually toss it kind of like that up there and then hit his serve. And I don't advocate that, but I've seen that. I've seen people toss like this, like an ice cream cone. I've seen people toss like this. The more conventional would be like Fed or Sampras, where they're holding the ball with their 2 or 3 fingers, and they actually have the ball in the racket in their hand. The reason for that is you want the right wrist, right hand to be as relaxed as possible. It's key. You know, you're going to see, just look at YouTube. You're going to see pictures of Sampras, Federer, Edberg, Roddick. Those are the ones I know for sure that I've seen close-ups of them when they're serving. And here's what you see right before contact. Look at my fingers. See my fingers? So are they squeezing tight? No way. Fingers are off the racket. They're like, you see, Sampras especially, those bottom 2 fingers are really loose. And when he accelerates, you see the fingers come on the racket. He's going to want to throw it. And then you say, well, how's it possible that the racket doesn't get thrown? Your thumb and middle finger are always in contact. They're always touching. So that's kind of the trigger your lock that it doesn't throw. So the fingers are loose. So back to the toss. The left hand does a lot of this service. Of course, through rackets, you can relax your right hand. Ivan Lendl, famous for being so tight when he was younger. In the finals where I see him squeeze his racket, forearm muscles bulging. Later in his career, you see him always taking sawdust out of his pocket. That wasn't just for sweat, it was a reminder. It was a trick, a gimmick he had to throw the sawdust. And you know, I'll remember that. The other players would complain there's all this sawdust on when we switch course and they have to switch off. But that, for a while there, he really had luck. It was his idea, or his way of loosening up his fingers, getting the tension out of his hand. He'd always do this. And this hand would hold it. So here's the ball. Ideally, fundamentally, we have the ball in that area. Some actually too big, some actually too small. If that doesn't work, you could be here, anywhere that you can hold it and have it light into the fingertips. Once you let go of the racket, and the ball goes straight up, is I believe, as straight as you can throw it with this little spinning action. I didn't disagree with Daniel Marco. I don't think the ball should have any action. This is your one chance. You know, this is the one time tennis is like golf. When the ball is still on and get the racket. Golf is so easy. The ball is still, you're still, right? That's what it's about. You can see what I feel about golf. Here's our one chance to be like a golfer. Feet are still. Chance to have the ball right where we want it. So why would we want it to jump or to spin? Why would we want it going too high and too low? You know, this started a big controversy back in Charlotte in the last talk where one of the people in the audience was sure that the best way to hit a serve was to throw your serve perfectly up and hit it right at its peak. I don't know if I can demonstrate. I can demonstrate like if I know, like right, I right. Did I get it at its peak? I got it. Did I get it at its peak? I don't know if it's right. Now I'll try the full motion. I might have got it, but I have to throw it lower quicker. So there's only been one server in the history of the game that's done that. Is that success? Roscoe Tanner. And guess what? Slow motion Ross Continental serving, and see the toss drops by about 2 or 3 inches. There's nobody that I've seen, and I'd love to get an email from you if you heard me wrong, a great server. Yes, there are people out there that serve like this. We got the 4 or 5 weekend warrior that goes like this. Yeah, he's getting it on the rise. But no great server do I know that the ball doesn't drop at least 6 to 8 inches. On a second serve, 12 to 18 inches. Roddick's second serve drops to the point where, I forgot about that part. I didn't make sure I talked about it. It's critical to have success on a second serve to let the ball drop at least, you measure, what's that, about 5 or 6 inches? At least 5 or 6 inches lower, so when you make contact, your arm is still bent. How do you go low to high if you're at the highest point? And that's what started the argument with the German. He said, you have to make contact at the highest point, you have to hit the ball right when you speak. So I said, no, you don't. Go to YouTube and look again. And he kept coming back, and then Chip, or one of the local pros had his iPad and said, look, here, he showed you that the ball was dropping in slow motion. And then his point was, we all teach to make contact at the highest possible point. Let's just pretend right now I'm standing, because this is too low. Pretend I'm standing. So we've all been taught, I was taught this, make contact as high as I can possibly reach, right? This is how we're taught. But how do I hit topspin? I'm talking about first serve. And the second serve, I was also taught that, how do I hit topspin? How? Is it possible? No? It's impossible. I can't go any higher. The definition is low to high. That's what in the beginning. So you need to let that ball drop. Hopefully y'all can see this. So here's my first serve toss. Second serve toss has to toss enough. I drop enough that I can now go from low to high. And by the time all these my racket, I'm at the highest point. And that first occurred to me when I was sitting on the side. And you can see if you're sitting on the side there and you're looking, they can pick a spot on the back wall where I'm making contact with my first serve. And you focus on that point and make a mark on the wall. Next time, second serve, you're going to say, wow, he made contact a foot below where he made contact with the second. And you'll start to understand how much you let the ball drop to be able to go up and explode up and out. Roddick's is phenomenal. The difference, how much he lets that ball drop. And if you ask the pros who has the best second serve of all time, there's not even a question about it. But the definition of the extended arm is Roddick. Roddick. I wish I ever had a second serve. I'm not talking about the aces, I'm talking about the kick serve. So that's critical. You let the ball drop a good amount to be able to go low to high, get your topspin on it.
Bill, do you let your shoes track the ball, or do you make them have the toss conform to their physical position?
Okay, again, what do you mean by tracking?
When they toss the ball out of their want the shoes to, don't track the ball and walk after it, take a step or two to get to it, do you make them toss it to where they can't move in their physical location?
Yes. Yeah, I was talking about earlier, it's our one chance to be like golf and have a perfect ball for us. We don't want to be chasing our toss, or there's an expression in Spain where they talk about fishing for your toss, tossing, go fishing to try to find where it is. You want it to be consistent, so we have drills. I just wish we had a higher wind stream here. One of my favorite drills for learning a serve is the one that Stanford's used. I guess, did everybody see what I'm on my knees over here, what I'm doing? Okay, so pretend I'm standing, and pretend this wind screen goes all the way up. Behind every wind screen is always a fence post or something, or this one actually has lines on it. So, do you want to move over just a little bit? So we'll pretend that I'm standing, and we practice tossing. So you put your hand, I'm about, I don't know, maybe 8 to 12 inches away from the windscreen. And we just practice tossing up along that windscreen. Now the ball is not allowed to veer more than 3 inches to the left, 3 inches to the right. It cannot hit the wall, and it can't be 3 inches back. So you have to envision a cylinder, and they're tossing the ball up and down that cylinder like that. So that was bad. That was 4 inches to the right. So keep going. There, that was better. Okay, so now I'm getting a feel. So now I got to do this with my motion. So now I would do it with my full motion, because we all know as soon as the person does this, then all of a sudden the toss goes further back. So I'm back at the back fence, and I'm trying to make the ball stay in that cylinder, up and down. And now I do the full motion, then stay there, and there's a land right there. So I'll put a racket there, and say, this is where you have 3 inches in any direction that toss can go. Okay, for first serve, 3 inches more in front. So by the time my hip gets underneath the ball, by the time my hip's out under, the ball's right above me, maybe a few inches more in front for the first serve, a few inches just above me for the second serve, but it's on the same plane. And to get the rhythm of the toss and get it consistent, I'll have them do that. San Francisco coach used to make them do that. The story varies, but at least 10 times in each practice he did have problems because he tended to do this kind of a toss that would drift across the horizon. So I wanted him to get it up and down straight to get it consistent. So that's a good tossing to it. Did everybody understand that drill? It's like shooting foul shots. You just do it until they get it right over and over. Yeah, Brett?
Left tip. The left tip on the second serve. Does it vary any from the first serve?
Just the more underneath the ball you get it, the better. When you watch something like Roddick's,
I'm talking about the turn.
oh, the turn forward, okay, so that's a different. That I talk more about in the first serve, but the loading of the hip going here, okay, here we are for second serve, and then for more power, this is for upward speed, for spin and arc. For more power, now we turn more. So we're going to turn more like a baseball pitcher. Now you would, where they turn their hips and they unload, or on a forehand, a bottom forehand, where you got legs, hips, and then hands, baseball batter, legs, hips, and then hands. Same on the serve. We've got legs, hips, and then hands second. And there's also rotational force, where it's legs, hips, and right before you accelerate up, you turn the hips. Sampras is the best person. Later in his career, you're going to see him early in his career, he looked like this. He would come in, he'd be here, and he'd turn a little bit. There'd be a slight pause, and then he'd serve. Later in his career, when I feel his service at its best, because he was slowing down, yet he's still on the US Open later, you see him, there's no pause. He gets here, and then as he's getting to here, you'll see this action here where his hips are turning up. And for me, that was like the idea, the premium of the premium serves. And Federer does that quite a bit. But now when I'm teaching people, that's my last phase of the getting a chain, is getting that turning, because then I have the problem of kids going back to this motion instead of up and over, having a catapult. So it's like taking the catapult and not adding a little bit of turn to it to get that extra power. You know, I agree, the more you evolve the raising the hips, the better, the speed. The second serve, I don't talk that much about that, but they really have that upper explosion, they can make a jump. Then that extra hip action adds that extra speed to the ball from the court. More questions? Got any more time? Yeah, about 5 minutes, okay. So, go ahead.
All right. And what do you consider the role of like your tossing arm when you're tossing the ball in relation to the elbow and the wrist? Do you encourage to keep it straight or use the bend of the elbow?
That's kind of your question.
Seems like what I see a lot of club players. If you look at the pros and the club players like to look at the pros and kind of try to copy them, but what you said just then in your demonstration about the loading part, the pro players, they turn their hips and their shoulders as they're loading and they bring the ball up, but the ball in relation to them stays about the same place on their toss. But the club player, they don't turn their hips and shoulders, they move their arm. And what I see is when they make that dip, then you have a dip at the top too, which makes them arc their back to hit. Do you agree? Or?
Yeah. Again, I go back to the less moving parts, the better. However, we need extra moving parts for PNH and power. So I like to simplify the toss and make it only go one direction, but you're absolutely right. A lot of pros do more of a circle. That's their comfort zone, that's their rhythm, and if it works for them, it helps them get more turn. Ivanisevic, great lefty server, the final one we're going after all this drives, was a big proponent of he'd actually toss. He's a lefty, so right. He'd actually turn like this as he's tossing, and the ball is very close right there in the pocket. I think the simpler you can make the toss, everybody's different though. Some of the pros like to toss, they'll get their arm way down here and toss more straight arm. Others have it nice and bent, more like Fed and Sampras, where it's kind of bent in the beginning and they stretch up to high. The key is whatever they can consistently do and have control of the ball so it's going straight up and down. Straight up and down, from my definition, means straight up and down. Straight up and down from Ivanisevic's is more curved. His straight up and down is across the horizon down. But for me, you're adding a new dimension, left to right and up and down. So it's a little bit more challenging, I think, to be consistent with it. But I am a believer that the arm should be slightly different than the last. I don't like people to lock that out. But I know there's some pros that do this straight arm stuff. But I just feel it's easier for me to control the ball. Yeah. I'm sorry?
Management of direction when they get the new spin cheap in terms of moving it around the court?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so the definition of the second serve is spin and arc. So it can be slice, it can be even backspin. This for a 2.0 player, this is the second serve. They got backspin, they got arc, but it was out. So maybe I need to just poke it. So that would be, and then as you go up the ladder, once we get to the part where we're able to hit kick serve, then it's critical that we're able to hit the kick serve to every spot of the court. So the kick serve should be able, they should be able to hit it to the backhand, right, to the body, and then wide to the forehand. You say, why wide to the forehand? That doesn't make sense. Why do you want a ball sitting to the forehand? We're not talking about a sitter. We're talking about a ball that when the person steps out to the big forehand, the ball's coming back to their face, and they're trying to defend. So they should, and if they've got a lefty, so the kick serve should be able to hit all three spots in the deuce, all three spots in the ad, and then the slices. They should be able to do the spins to all spots in the court. You've got to be able to locate a ball. I think yesterday, those of us that saw Johnson play, he did a couple fantastic kick serves that landed maybe 6 feet up. This is pretty much where you want it, or you're right when you hit his second serve sometimes up in this area. And Taylor was hitting the ball like out in this area out here. And this is what you want. If you watch the pros play, I want to say at least 60 to 70% of serves are out wide because they construct their patterns. This is 1 2. They're not just trying to get it in play. So why he didn't do that more? I don't know. I don't know if his back was bothering him, his tired of it. He had tremendous success when he did it, but he didn't do it. He just hit through the court more. I know he was jamming. And then he would go wide. But it's important with the kick serve that you have that, so you add court, you can get the player to have to move up. If somebody's serving a guy, you can choose a returner, you've got to stand in more, so you can get up here and take it up in this area before they get you off the court. Well, if you don't have that serve, the returner can just stay back here and handle your power all day. So the kick serve is critical that you're able to move it around the box and get your angle set on both sides, just like you do a slice. Did that answer your question, Kim?
Yeah, pretty much. It's more the student that is just kind of finally getting the sting and being able to move it to different places, how you might get them to correct to make it go wide or make it go down the center.
Okay, that's a good question. So how do I take somebody that's just learning to kick and get them to vary the direction? I did a lot with, again, where I'm going to take away my legs. First of all, I think everybody stand the same. They shouldn't be standing like this to go to the back end, this to the forehand, all that kind of stuff. They should stand the same. It's all should be the same. They just isolate the wrist. So I'd have them take the kick, make them press more to the right, grab the ball, and bite the ball more to the right to go to the backhand, a little bit more into the ball, go to the forehand side. So toss out that way, my wrist more over to a Dave now. Get it down, and I want to go to the forehand. Still go out to a Dave, I'm going to grab a little bit more of the side of the ball and go more that way. And just making where you made contact and how you made contact. The problem is, at a basic level, when they first start kicking, they go to the wide of the forehand, they tend to get a little more slice on the ball. It's important to learn to take the kick and take it in that direction. It's a lot like the volley when I said stay outside the ball, make the ball go down the line. When you're outside of it, you shove it down the line. And I'm on the inside of the ball, but I'm shoving it out. On the inside of the ball, but I'm shoving it out there toward the corner. Is this what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's that whole idea of if a ball is spinning, is going forward, but it's spinning toward David over there, well, does it really matter whether I hit it to the backhand corner and spin like that, or if I hit it to the forehand corner and spin like that? It's still going to bounce the same. So it's a matter of having control of the ball and making it feel. That's a high level. 3 out 3 5s, it's not going to get that high. So, one more quick comment. I know one of you guys know what I was talking to me about. We were talking about why Steve didn't do more of that. You know, in general, if you look at, you can get an idea of a pro serving strategy by looking at after the match. They show the stats of where the serves landed in the box. It's very rare these days you have a player like Nadal who serves 80% of his serves always to the backhand corner. That's where he's comfortable. Why? Anybody know why he does that? He's a lefty guy. Why does he always serve to this corner? Where's the ball going to come back and it serves out to your backhand? His forehand. He wants forehand. He lives and dies by forehand. It's really hard with a lefty spin moving like that and taking it and go down the line to his backhand without creating some error. So, but in general, if you take a look at Fed when he's playing the average player, the average player meaning his early rounds before you see the semis, you're going to see basically 40 in the deuce court, probably 40% wide, in the ad court 40% wide, and the rest are body and up the middle. You say, no, that's not true. That's not true. When he plays Djokovic, we're seeing all these balls at the center tee and all these balls at the bottom. Well, that's because it's one of the best servers in the world, and he's an outline ball. But you got to take that into account. But you generally want to keep your serves opening up the court, and that's why spin's important. With a flat ball only, just a further flat ball, it's hard for me to get it out wide over here, right? Just can't get it in the box. As soon as I put some spin on it, I should be able to get it right in that area and get it. So spins are important for all levels of serves. Any more questions? I'm sorry. Well, I'll show you for seconds here. Once he got it, this was over a period of 18 months. Once he got it, my favorite drill with him, and he loved it, because if he's serving from that side, he had to hit the ball, kick and hit the side fence over here before he hit the back fence. Just a simple concept for him. It's probably nuts. When he first came, his serve would never even get outside the double guard because he had most of the slice. He could leave it. So eventually it would go here, and by the end of the 18 months, he was kicking the ball to the wind and hit the side fence really well. He would take the speed off it. Make it here, I'll show you. He would take the speed off it and just use the hands. So he would go here, and he'd take all the speed and just try to get this kind of sound and get it over there. Get it over that area with this kind of speed. Just to really get that spin, and then gradually that power and try to decide fence through. But we did this stuff in the very beginning, when we first came, because we had no idea really how to hit low to high on the serve. I think that's all the time I have. Thank you all very much.